collector cars go up and down. The market shifts. A bad economy hits. A generation loses interest. Prices soften. Not this one. In over 50 years of recorded auction history, the 1969 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 has never, not once, posted a meaningful, sustained decline in value. Through recessions, through oil shocks, through the muscle car dark ages of the late 1970s and 1980s, through the 2008 financial crisis, this car kept climbing. Today, documented examples are selling for $120,000 to $180,000. The record? $330,000 set in January 2025 for an RS/Z28 combination at Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale. So the question isn't whether this car holds value. The data settled that a long time ago. The question is, why? What is it about this specific car, this particular option package from 1969, that makes it different from every other muscle car of the era? By the end of this video, you'll have the complete answer, and I think it will change the way you look at the entire classic car market. Let's start at the beginning. Why the Z28 even exists. The SCCA problem. To understand why the Z28 never loses value, you first have to understand why it was built. Because the reason is unlike almost any other car from this era. In 1966, the Sports Car Club of America launched its Trans-American Sedan Championship. The rules were simple. 4-passenger production cars. Engine displacement capped at 5 liters, 305 cubic inches. And here's the key rule. The manufacturer had to sell at least 1,000 street-legal versions to qualify for homologation. Ford already had a 302 cubic inch V8 in their lineup. They were ready to race Mustangs from day one. Chevrolet had a problem. Their existing small block lineup was the 283 and the 327. Nothing in between. Nothing that fit under the 305 cubic inch limit with enough performance to be competitive. Enter Vince Piggins, a Chevrolet performance engineer who had spent years pushing GM to build purpose-built race cars dressed as street vehicles. His solution was elegant. Take the 4-inch bore from the 327 block, mate it with the 3-inch stroke crankshaft from the 283. Result? 302.4 cubic inches, comfortably under the SCCA limit, perfectly legal. GM executives approved the plan in August 1966. The car was given the regular production option code Z28, which is literally how it got its name. Not a marketing department, not a focus group, an internal parts code on an option sheet. The SCCA required 1,000 street examples to be sold for homologation. Chevrolet built and sold exactly 602 of them in 1967. Technically not enough, but a loophole involving the base Camaro covered the gap. Nobody complained. The Z28 was on the track. Sales told the story from there. 602 in 1967. 7,199 in 1968, as word spread about what this car could do, and 20,302 in 1969, the final year for the first generation, when the Z28 reached its absolute peak. After 1969, the body style changed, the formula shifted, and the magic of that original 3-year run was frozen in time. Those 28,000 cars, spread across 3 model years, are all that will ever exist. And every year, the number of survivors gets a little smaller. The DZ302, engineering a legend. The engine at the center of this car's legend is the DZ302, and it is one of the most unusual, purpose-built small blocks ever installed in an American production car. Here's what makes it strange. It's not the biggest engine of its era. It's not the most torque-heavy. In fact, It produces less low-end grunt than virtually every big block muscle car it competed against on the street. But that's not what it was designed to do. The DZ302 was built to rev. Built for the high RPM range where road racing happens, not the drag strip, but the corners and straights of a real circuit. Forged steel internals throughout. Forged pistons. A solid lifter camshaft with aggressive timing. High flow heads. An aluminum high-rise intake manifold topped by a 780 cubic feet per minute Holley 4-barrel carburetor. 11-to-1 compression ratio. Chevrolet rated it at 290 horsepower. That number is one of the great corporate understatements in automotive history. Dynamometer tests, both contemporary and later independent testing, consistently showed the DZ302 making close to 360 horsepower with the single 4-barrel setup. When fitted with the optional over-the-counter cross-ram intake, which mounted 2 Holley carburetors on a dual-plane aluminum manifold, output climbed to approximately 400 horsepower at the high end of the rev range. Why did Chevrolet underrate it so dramatically? 2 reasons. First, insurance premiums in 1969 were being calculated partly on the basis of rated horsepower. Lower official numbers meant lower insurance costs for buyers. Second, GM had an internal corporate policy at the time limiting horsepower claims on certain vehicle categories. Chevrolet's engineers knew what the engine actually made, they just didn't advertise it. One more detail that defines this engine's character. A stock DZ302 with the factory setup barely pulled below 3,500 revolutions per minute. Below that, it was almost docile. Above it, the solid lifters engaged fully, the Holley woke up, and the engine transformed into something that Road and Track described as feeling like a bona fide racing car in street clothing. That dual personality, tractable enough to drive to work, ferocious enough to win championships, is a large part of why this car found its audience both on the track and in the garage. Mark Donohue and the Trans Am domination. The racing story of the Z28 is inseparable from one name, Mark Donohue. Donohue was one of the most technically sophisticated racing drivers of his era, an engineer by training who approached race preparation with a methodical precision that most of his competitors couldn't match. When Roger Penske's team selected the Camaro Z28 as their Trans Am weapon, they called themselves Team Unfair Advantage. That wasn't false modesty. In 1968, Donohue, driving the Penske-prepared Sunoco liveried Z/28, won 10 of 13 Trans Am races, 10 out of 13. The championship wasn't close. Chevrolet took the manufacturer's championship with the maximum points available. Ford's factory Mustang effort was competitive but outgunned. The AMC Javelin and Mercury Cougar weren't factors at the front. In 1969, Donohue and Penske came back and did it again. A second consecutive Trans Am Manufacturers Championship for Chevrolet, again with the Z28. Here's the critical thing about those championships from a collector value perspective. Trans Am racing in 1968 and 1969 was nationally televised. It had mainstream coverage. Fans watching those races on a Saturday afternoon went to their Chevrolet dealer on Monday morning and asked for the Z28. The same car that was winning on the track. Not a version of it, not a spiritual successor, the same package. That direct lineage, racetrack to showroom floor, is something that almost no other muscle car can claim with such specificity. The Z28's win record isn't historical trivia, it's the foundation of its collector value, and it gets more valuable, not less, with every passing year as the era recedes further into automotive history. Ford eventually responded with the Boss 302 Mustang for the 1969 season. By then, Chevrolet had already built an enormous advantage. Z28 sales outnumbered Boss 302 sales in 1969 by roughly 12-1. The Z28 had already won the cultural argument before Ford even showed up to the fight. 1969. The definitive year and what made it special. Of the 3 years of first-generation Z28 production, 1967, 1968, and 1969, collectors and the auction market have consistently placed the highest premium on 1969. Here's why. The 1969 model year brought entirely new sheet metal to the Camaro. Longer, lower, more aggressively sculptured. The grille was redesigned with a heavy V-shaped cant and deeply inset headlights. New quarter panels, new door skins, a new rear valance. Where the 1967 and 1968 Camaros had smooth, rounded lines, the 1969 had sharp creases and a muscular stance that looked fast standing still. Specifically for the Z/28, 1969 introduced the ZL2 cowl induction hood, a ducted hood that pulled cooler, denser air from the high-pressure area at the base of the windshield directly into the air cleaner. It was functional, not decorative. It fed colder air into the DZ302, improving power output and cooling efficiency at the same time. Also new for 1969 was an expanded option matrix that let buyers configure the Z/28 in ways the earlier years didn't allow. The RS Appearance Package, hidden headlights, full-width tail lighting, body-colored bumper inserts could now be combined with the Z/28 Performance Package. That RS/Z28 combination is the variant that has consistently achieved the highest auction results, including the $330,000 record sale. One more detail that defines 1969 Z/28 values for serious collectors. A small number of 1969 cars were ordered with the JL8 option, a factory four-wheel disc brake system developed directly from Penske's Trans Am race car data. It was a dealer-installed option, available by special order, and the number of surviving examples with documented JL8 equipment is extremely small. Cars with verified JL8 brakes carry a significant premium over otherwise comparable Z28s. The Z28 option package itself was priced at $506.60 in 1969, on top of a base Camaro sticker of around $2,700. Less than $300 more than the year before. An absolute bargain for what you were getting, and one of the last times a street-legal, race-bred American performance car would be this affordable relative to its capability. Today's auction numbers. What the market says. Let's look at what the market is actually doing with this car right now. According to Classic.com's auction tracking, the highest recorded sale for a 1969 Camaro Z28 is $330,000. That was an RS Z28 combination car sold at Barrett-Jackson's Scottsdale auction on January 24, 2025. At RM Sotheby's online auction in October 2024, a 1969 Z/28 Sport Coupe sold for $143,000. At Mecum Las Vegas in October 2024, another 1969 Z28 crossed the block at $121,000. At Worldwide Auctioneers Auburn in August 2024, one sold for $115,000. Notice the pattern: multiple sales, multiple venues, multiple condition grades, all consistently above six figures for documented, numbers-matching examples. Let's put this in Hagerty condition grade terms. A 1969 Z/28 in what Hagerty calls good condition, running well, looking presentable, but not show quality, is currently valued in the $80,000 to $100,000 range. That's the floor for a real, documented car. Push into excellent condition, correct, restored, or well-preserved, drives and shows well, and you're in the $120,000 to $160,000 range, depending on color and documentation. True Concours quality, correct colors, matching numbers engine, original paperwork, the $180,000 to $330,000 range. And for the RS/Z28 combination with JL8 brakes and cross-ram documentation, the ceiling is being reset by the market with each major auction. Here's the longer view. At the Gooding & Company's Scottsdale auction in January 2020, at the beginning of this decade, a 1967 Camaro Z28 sold for $151,200. In 1969, a Z28 could be bought new for $3,234 all in. In 2014, a 1969 Z28 at Gooding's Pebble Beach auction brought $156,750. The directional trend across every time period, every economic condition, every market cycle is the same: up. 4 reasons this car will never lose value. The complete answer. So now we can answer the actual question. Why will this car never lose value? 4 reasons, and each one reinforces the others. Reason 1. Fixed and shrinking supply. There will never be more than 20,302 first-generation 1969 Z/28s. Every year, a small number are lost to accidents, fires, floods, and neglect. The total surviving population only moves in one direction. When supply permanently shrinks and cannot be replenished, the floor under the price becomes structural. Reason 2. Documented racing provenance. Most muscle cars have a performance story that lives in brochures and magazine road tests. The Z28 has a racing story that lives in championship trophies. Mark Donohue, Roger Penske, 10 wins in 13 races. 2 consecutive Trans Am titles. That legacy is recorded in official motorsport history, and it grows more significant, not less, as the era becomes more distant. When the last people who watched those races in person are gone, the documentation of what this car accomplished will be the only thing left. Documentation always commands a premium. Reason 3. The Camaro discontinuation effect. In 2024, General Motors stopped producing the Camaro. No new 6th generation, no announcement of a 7th. The nameplate is, for now, frozen in time, much as Pontiac was frozen when GM discontinued that brand in 2010. When we look at what happened to Pontiac collector car values after the brand was discontinued, the pattern is clear. Scarcity of the nameplate itself adds value to every car that carries it. There are no new Camaros coming. Every first-generation Z28 just became a little more irreplaceable. Reason 4. New collector generation. The buyers currently driving Z/28 prices at Barrett-Jackson and Mecum are predominantly in their 50s and 60s, people who grew up seeing these cars on the street and in magazines. But behind them is a younger cohort of enthusiasts in their 30s and 40s who grew up with the internet, who learned about the Z28 through YouTube channels, restoration shows, and automotive media. This second wave of collectors has the same emotional connection to the car, combined with the research tools to understand exactly what they're buying. As the first wave ages out of the market, the second wave is already forming behind it. The demand curve has generational depth. Those 4 factors together, fixed supply, documented racing legacy, nameplate discontinuation, and multi-generational collector demand, create a value foundation that is, in my opinion, as close to permanently stable as the collector car market gets. My final verdict on the 1969 Camaro Z28. If you can find a documented, numbers-matching example at a fair price, and fair right now means somewhere in the $90,000 to $150,000 range depending on condition, I think you buy it. Not because it'll double in value next year, not because it's some kind of guaranteed investment vehicle, but because the combination of racing history, mechanical integrity, cultural significance, and permanent scarcity creates a floor under this car that I've never seen meaningfully break in 50 years of market data. This is one of the rare cases where the title of this video is also the investment thesis. The 1969 Camaro Z28 will not lose value. Not because I say so, because it never has, and the structural reasons for that have only gotten stronger with time. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever owned a Z/28? Or is this a car you've always wanted but never pulled the trigger on? Drop it in the comments. I read every one, and your stories are genuinely one of my favorite parts of making this channel. If you're new here, we break down the real history and real market data behind American muscle cars every single week. Subscribe and hit the bell. because next week I'm going to show you the muscle car from this exact era that does lose value, and the reason why might surprise you. See you then.